family. This is a call for support for the Yahushua Estate Project. The video for the longer presentation will be linked in here or will be in the description. What if you had the chance to help Noah build the ark? What if you could stand beside Moses and Aaron as they led our people out of Egypt? Would you say yes? Would you act? Well, this mission is just like that. The Yahushua Estate is being built here in Ghana as a refuge, a safe place for the awakening remnant around the world. This is more than land. It's obedience, it's prophecy, it's preparation. So pray, share, and if Yahuwah leads you, give. Let's build this place together, and may Yahuwah bless us all.
Greetings, family. Welcome back to the African Exodus show. My name is Sister Tyranny here to you with a new video. Before we get started with today's show, quick reminders to you all, if you do want to stay connected with this channel outside of YouTube, you can simply add yourself to my Telegram channel. And there I post anytime that I upload a new video, so you'll get a notification directly to your phone. In addition, if you want any of the slides from today's presentation or any of the sources that I cite, you could go to my Patreon and download it directly from there. Thank you everyone who supports me through that platform and also through the other platforms. It's very much appreciated to all of you. Okay, so we're going on talking about Babylon. We spoke last time about what is Babylon, because that's important. There has been a lot of teachings that I think are unintentionally misleading some people who think that they have come out of Babylon just because those people are not subscribing to the spiritual system of Babylon, right? The spiritual system of Babylon, if you do not know, goes all the way back to ancient Babylon. You also see it being transferred to ancient Egypt. You see it in ancient Rome, ancient Greece. You see it in the Vatican. You see it in Judaism. You see it in Kabbalah. You see it throughout the world, Islam. You see it. And really, it goes back to the mystery schools. The mystery schools that came out of ancient Babylon, they were also in ancient Egypt. These mystery schools have been teaching esoteric teachings for a long time, basically almost since the beginning, since the Watchers came and handed down sacred knowledge to humankind. They have been teaching this throughout different religious systems. And so some people think that coming out of Babylon simply means separating themselves from the religious systems. Now, we spoke last time. Definitely suggest you go back to that video and watch it in full to understand that, yes, there is a spiritual system behind Babylon. I mean, everything is spiritual if you want to talk about it like that. Literally, the scripture tells us we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, dark powers, and high places. We wrestle against a spiritual world, right? But at the same time, while we can see a spiritual component, that should not erase to us any physical component, any material component. Anything that's affecting us in our day-to-day lives, whether we are going out to work, whether we're going out to church, dropping our kids off at daycare, dropping our kids off at school. All of these are material instances where we are interacting with the Babylon system. And we spoke about that last time, whether you want to go through the book of Revelation where it talks about the actual materials that will be sold by the merchants, the things that people will be weeping over. They can no longer receive from an economic system. They can no longer receive from the powers that are established through governments. All of that, all of these things are actual and real. They're not just a spiritual system. It's actually our day-to-day reality, because all of us are living inside of a world order based on Babylon and led by the daughter of Babylon, who is the United States. The United States, as we talked about last time, it is the inheritor of the throne. There has been no country like the United States in history. There is no country in the world that can stand up to the United States. Every single country in the world is either bowing down to the U.S. or, in the one rare instance of Zionist Israel, that country is essentially controlling things from behind the scenes. But that's a whole nother story. But we have to understand the uniqueness of the United States. You've never seen a world empire where there's military bases literally on almost every single country, military bases in Africa, military bases in the Middle East, military bases in Latin America, military bases in Europe. You've never seen a country like that. You've never seen a country where the entire world system is based on their currency and pegged to their currency. You've never seen something like the US dollar. This is truly unique. There's nothing in history that compares to it. So what we have to understand is that, as we've spoken about many times on this channel, when scripture mentions things and talks about it in a future sense and also a past sense, these are double meanings, triple meanings, sometimes quadruple meanings. Meaning, when you read Babylon in scripture, there was a actual place called Babylon inside of ancient Yasharel and ancient Israel. Well, not inside, but inside at that time. And in this time, we still see that system in existence today. But what we have to understand is that all of the judgment that was spoken against that ancient Babylon, more so, is pronounced against this current Babylon. Because if you don't know, the United States has ravaged the world, is still ravaging the world, sucking people dry. Poor nations are giving their wealth, their little bit of wealth, to this empire. Literally, they control every single country inside of the African continent. And you might say, oh, Burkina Faso. I say wait and watch, because one thing that we know from history is that the CIA never sleeps. And many of the people who you might think are free and liberated, many times you don't know what they're doing behind the scenes, or you don't know the plans to overthrow them. It's very easy for them to overthrow governments. They've been doing it for a long time. If you don't know, Burkina Faso, who used to be ruled by a leader that to me was the epitome of being a person for the people. Thomas Sankara, what happened with him? They simply convinced his best friend to overthrow him, have him killed, and gave the best friend the throne. This happens over and over again through history. They're very good at coups. They're very good at disrupting. They're very good at regime change. They've been doing it for a long time. So when we understand the immense power of this empire, we understand the military might. Never been a country to drop atomic bombs, 2 atomic bombs. Never ever been a country to do that, but this country. Never a country where all the world is pegged to their currency. Never a country where military bases are literally all over the world. We've never seen anything like that. So the more that we let that sink in, the more that we can understand that if it were not the United States who were the daughter of Babylon, then who? Who could compare? No one. This country stands alone. And when you also understand the founding of the United States of America, you understand that it was very much a Masonic, Masonic thing that was orchestrated from George Washington to Thomas Jefferson. These are all things we've talked about in the past, so we're not going to go back over that. Just want to emphasize that, though, because now we have to talk about what it means to come out of Babylon, okay? So I'm very aware there's different arguments about this. Some people say it's flee doctrine to tell people to get out of Babylon, to leave. Now, other people will say that scripture is very clear. It's clearly telling us to leave. So it's not flee doctrine. It's just prophecy being allowed to speak to us for what it says. I am of the latter view. I don't believe that telling people to get out of Babylon is something that we should ever be constrained to say and say truthfully. The reason I say that is because, as I'm going to argue with you right now, I don't believe Yasharel was ever supposed to be in Babylon. You might say, yes, they were inside of the Babylonian Empire. Yes, Babylonian Empire. They were under captivity for a particular time. Let's just read that scripture right now, the scripture that many people will cite. Jeremiah 29, verse 4 through 10, thus saith Yahuwah, Elohim of Yasharel, concerning the captivity which I caused to be carried away from Jerusalem. Build ye houses and inhabit them, and plant gardens and eat fruit thereof. Take ye wives and begat sons and daughters, and take wives for your sons, and give your daughters to husbands, and be multiplied, and be not diminished, and seek the peace of the land in which I have carried you captive. And ye shall pray to Yahuwah for the people. For in its peace ye shall have peace. For thus saith Yahuwah, let not the false prophets that are among you persuade you, and let not your diviners persuade you, and hearken not to your dreams which ye dream. For they prophesied to you unrighteous words in my name, and I sent them not. So what I want to emphasize about this scripture right here, that it's true. Yah did say to the people of Yahudah who are about to go into the Babylonian captivity, you're going to Babylon and you're going to still live. You're just going to plant gardens. You're going to build houses, have houses. this is what it is. Pray for the nation that you're in, because, hey, if they go down, you go down with it. But notice what it says later on. It says in verse 10, "For thus saith Yahuwah, when 70 years shall be on the point of being accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you and will confirm my words to you and bring you back to this place." Meaning this entire sentence of being in Babylon was only for 70 years. This is not something that's ongoing. In fact, you should ask the question, whenever Yah was supposed to bring the people back in 70 years, did everyone go back? No, we know historically not everyone went back. What happened? Many of the people did not want to go back to the land. Many of those same people actually clung to Babylon, and many of those same people were now inculcated into the Babylon system. And so whenever the Torah becomes Babylonianized, whenever it is given a new meaning inside of Judaism, whenever a new spiritual system becomes invented that's masquerading as Torah, but really we know that this is something that comes from the mystery school tradition. When that happens, many people who come from Yasharel, come from Yahuda, who were supposed to be separate, supposed to not just be in Babylon into perpetuity, they were supposed to be in Babylon for a season. When they were called back, many of those people didn't go back. Many of those people joined into a new religious system with their people who have converted to the system. So let's keep that in mind at all times. That was not something ongoing. We're not supposed to stay there. And certainly, if you look at how the New Testament assembly or ecclesia, the church, for lack of a better term, how they orchestrated themselves after Yahusha ascended. If you notice how they orchestrated themselves, how they worshiped, how they practiced, there was never this incentive to join the system, even though they were dispersed, the new believers were dispersed. There was always this idea of being separate from the system. So if you go to the book of Acts, chapter 2, verse 44 through 45, it says, "And all the believers were together and had all things in common, and they would sell their property and possessions and share them with all to the extent that anyone had need." Chapter 4, verse 32 through 35. "And the congregation of those who believed were of one heart and soul, and not one of them claimed that anything belonging to him was his own, but all things were common property to them. And with great power, the apostles were giving testimony to the resurrection of the Adonai Yahusha, and abundant grace was upon them all. For there was not a needy person among them, where all who were owners of land or houses would sell them and bring the proceeds to the cells and lay them at the apostles' feet, and they would be distributed to each to the extent that any had need." 1 Thessalonians 4:11 through 12. "And make it your ambition to lead a quiet life and to attend to your own business and work with your hands, just as we instructed you, so that you will behave properly toward outsiders and not be in any need." Notice the significance of what is being said here. The ecclesia, the assembly, the original assembly that comes after Yahusha ascended, they were not to go back into the world. They were not to go back into working with the enemy, working with the Gentile nation, working within the pagan culture. They were to be separate. And because of that, they started having things in common, meaning instead of this is mine, this is mine, this is yours, that type of situation wouldn't work well for people who wanted to be separate. Because of that, they put their things together so that they would be in common instead of relying on the system that they know was pagan, that they knew was Babylon or Roman side of certain instances. Instead of relying on these wicked systems, they said, we're going to provide for our own. We're going to provide for our own sick, our own needy. And they were not going to be reliant on the outsiders. Notice what Paul says. He says, don't be in need of any outside nation. You don't want any outside people, any people who are of the wicked world that we are in, to be the ones who determine your present reality. So is that the tradition that we were supposed to keep? Yes, that's the tradition that we were supposed to keep. Has that happened? No, because obviously we have a pseudo-religion, a pseudo-faith that has been created instead of the way being the original followers of Yahusha. Instead, now we have this Christianity religion that completely flipped the script, because they came out and said, no, actually the state is the church, right? Because we have the Vatican, who's going to be ruled, or we have the Catholic faith, that's going to be ruled by the Roman Empire. And so the Roman Empire is going to be the one who is leading the faith. So now do you see where compromises come in? Now it's, how do you be separate when it's the Roman Empire who's telling you, come to us, we'll teach you how to get to Jesus, right? That's what they put in place in order to have the people join into pagan customs, join into pagan society, not being able to be separate, because if they were to be separate, first of all, obviously you get persecuted. But second of all, they were now the authority under their new religious system. So that's where the deception comes in. Most of us never realized that we were supposed to continue on inside of this tradition of being separate from Babylon. Sadly, not until now, many people are coming out. Not until now, people are waking up, and now people are looking for, how do I separate myself from this system? So I would submit to you, it was never the case that the people of Yasharal, whether the bloodline descendants or those who are grafted in through the blood of Yahusha, it was never the case that we were meant to be in Babylon. It was never the case that we were meant to be dependent on Babylon. It was never the case that we were meant to be educated by Babylon. It was never the case that we were meant to be paid by Babylon. These are developments that come from the pseudo-religion that makes us think that the state is a part of our faith, that we have an incentive as believers in maintaining this state. And because of that, the compromises have been passed down over generations. It's just now this present generation where we are given the opportunity to wake up and say, no, this cannot continue on for us, for me, for my children. This cannot continue on, because we understand what time it is. We understand what season we're in. We're in the season where Babylon is about to fall. And there is a real question, will you fall with her? And this is not necessarily a issue of salvation. That's what I think some people get confusion with. They think that the question means that, oh, am I going to be sentenced in judgment because I was not able to do this or I was not able to do that? Look beyond that. Are you dependent on your enemy to do right by you? Does that make you comfortable? Should you feel comfortable? I don't feel comfortable being dependent on anyone except for Yahuwah. And if we were to live a set apart lifestyle, every single one of us should feel that. So it's not some type of, oh, you're going to hell. We know hell is not the reality, but you're going to hell because you are working in the system. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about the system in itself is against us. How can you be set apart while being in the system? That's really all it really comes down to. How can you? Are you making compromises to be able to be in that system? Are you compromising on keeping one day for Yahuwah, the seventh day? Are you compromising on a Sabbath? Are you compromising on your principles? I say I was. I was working when I was last working in the U.S. I was working for an organization that was pushing LGBT propaganda. So was I making compromises to be able to sit in on those meetings? Yeah, I had to, because it wouldn't work any other way. Before that organization, I wasn't working in one pushing LGBT propaganda, but I was working for the state of New Jersey. And by all means, they were doing the same thing, although to a lesser extent. But in other things, do I agree with many of the things that were happening through the child welfare system that I used to work in? Of course not. This idea that parents are not to be the ones to lead their children. Of course not. So many things were being taught and being pushed, and I was being used as an instrument of that. So today, can I look back on that and say, those compromises from Babylon, those were things that I were making. Yes, I can have that full picture, but only because I decided I wanted to be out of it. And I believe once you make that decision, Yah will work out the details. I also want to say, before we go through this, I've had a couple people comment, yes, I want to leave Babylon, but I don't have the money. I don't have the money to leave the United States. I don't have the people inside of Africa or any other place who I could go to and lean on. Well, first and foremost, I want you to understand Babylon is international, okay? I know that sounds like a contradiction, but bear with me. It is international. Every single country in this world, probably save like a few, maybe save North Korea, but pretty much every country in this world has a Babylon setup inside of it. But Still, most of those countries, not all, if you're in Europe, it's very difficult to say that, but many of the countries, the same countries where you have aspects of the state being Babylon, is ineffective as if compared to like somewhere in the United States, somewhere in Europe, because the system is not able to operate everywhere like it does in the West. They don't have the technology. They don't have the electricity. So, for example, is Babylon in the country where I reside in Ghana? Absolutely. There are certain places I would not want to live because I understand that the system is intact there, that the institutions are completely indoctrinated there. But is there places that are not inside of that system? Absolutely. So when you regard Babylon as a system instead of just a place, because it is a place, and the daughter of Babylon, the leader of Babylon, is absolutely the United States, are there ways, possibly or conceivably, where Yah could assist you to maybe you can't leave the country, but you can live outside of the system? You can distance yourself from the system. Is there ways that can come about? I absolutely believe so. There's people who are doing that already. In fact, I posted one brother's video who is completely living off the land. I'm going to post that down below so that you can go and watch that for yourself, because yes, there are ways that we can, in the present reality, separate ourselves from the system. So how to each person, it works out for each person is going to be differently. But if you are of the same Ruach, then guess what? You are of the same power base that rose Yahushua from the dead. You should not be of little faith and think that you are confounded to this system. By all means, trust in Yahuwah. He would not write something to you if he was not willing to make a way out for you. And I understand that takes an immense amount of faith, especially depending on your circumstance. Let's say you're the leader of a Fortune 500 company and you have conviction, or let's say you don't have a lot of money, but the little that you have, maybe you're dependent on welfare or something like that. I understand that that's something that takes faith, but that's exactly what we're here for. We're here not to be here on our own faith and or on our own strength. We're honestly here to be on the strength of Yahuwah. So I definitely encourage anyone who is having doubts or who feels discouraged hearing this message to call out to him, because he hears every single one of you. He knows your situation and your circumstances, and he's faithful to those who submit themselves to him. So by all means, pray to him. Also want to put this last caveat in there that do I believe every single person is supposed to physically leave the United States or Europe? I don't believe that. But as I said, this question is, are you to be dependent on the system that's going to implode very soon? I don't believe you should. I don't believe scripturally that was ever Yah's will for us. I believe that is a corruption of doctrine done by the Roman Catholics to make us think that these are things that we can submit ourselves to. But we have to make that separation one time or another. And I believe the season is now. So I want to start with the judgment that is coming surely on the system, and understand that the place that is the pinnacle of the system right now, the United States, judgment is spoken against that. I just want to cite some scriptures because I want you to be clear about what is prophesied to happen. This is not my opinion. This is not what I think is going to happen. It's what the Most High said, and his word will never return void. So anytime you think about how many times his word came true, whenever you think about what happened with his words spoken against Egypt, Mitzrayim, did they return void? No, they did not. Did his words return void about Yasharel? No. Think about that. Let that resonate, like how powerful it is. Every single word inside of Deuteronomy 28 that prophesies the fall of the children of Yasharel, who we know are dispersed throughout the African diaspora. That's literally their present reality. His words do not return void. So similarly, these words I'm about to speak do not return void, will not return void. So we're going to go to Baruch chapter 4, 31 through 35. Miserable are they that afflicted thee, and rejoiced at thy fall. Miserable are the cities which thy children served. Miserable is she that received thy sons, for as she rejoiced at thy ruin, and was glad of thy fall, so shall she be grieved over her own desolation. For I will take away the rejoicing of her great multitude, and her pride shall be turned into mourning. For fire shall come upon her from the everlasting, long to endure, and she shall be inhabited of devils for a great time. Isaiah 18, 1 through 3. Woe to you, ye wings of the land of ships, beyond the rivers of, it says Ethiopia. I'm going to come back to that. He sends messengers by the sea and paper letters on the water, for swift messengers shall go to a lofty nation and to a strange and harsh people who is beyond it, a nation not looked for, and trod it down. Now all the rivers of the land shall be inhabited as an inhabited country, and their land shall be as when a signal is raised from a mountain. It shall be audible as the sound of a trumpet. So I said, let's pause at the part with Ethiopia. So it says, woe to ye, the land of ships beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. Okay. I've talked about this many times. Anytime you see the word Ethiopia inside of scripture, it's talking about Cush, or Kus if you look at the Hebrew concordance. And this is actually the nation. It was actually a nation that existed. So people have so many interpretations of the scripture. Some people say, oh, beyond the rivers of Ethiopia is talking about all of Africa. No, look at the Hebrew meaning. Don't focus on the translator, what the translator said, because the word Ethiopia didn't even exist whenever this was first spoken and written. Okay, the country didn't exist. The designation is completely from Greece, but the word Kus, or Kush, that actually was a place, obviously. We know that is the place that bordered Yasharel to the north. If you know about the true Yasharel that was inside of East Africa. If you don't, I'll plug my documentary, Israel Uncovered, here. You should definitely watch that. So this is beyond the rivers of Kush. So what's the river of Kush? It is obviously the Nile River. That's the greatest river. So if we're talking about beyond the rivers of Kush, it can't be the Red Sea. That is to, if you're looking at it from, let's say, looking at Africa from the right side being the east and the left side being the west. It can't be the Red Sea. It would have to be somewhere over the Atlantic. Now, does that automatically mean that this is the United States? Well, some more things tell us that this is the United States. When he says he sends messengers by sea and paper letters on the water, for swift messengers shall go to a lofty nation and to a strange and harsh people who was beyond it, a nation not looked for and trod it down. Okay, I want to emphasize that the nation that looked for and trod it down at that particular time was the United States not looked for and trod it down. Meaning at that particular time that the scripture comes out, this scripture was written. Was this a place where the system had reached yet? No, this was actually an untrodden territory at that time. Now we know now it's completely trodden down by people from the United States. And then it talks about this is a place of rivers, an inhabited country. Their land shall be when a signal is raised from a mountain. It shall be audible as a sound of a trumpet. All right, so I want to go to another scripture to add on to this. We're going to go to Zechariah 2:6-10. It says, woe, or ho, ho. And some translations will say, get up now. It just depends on how the person wanted to translate it. But I like to stick with the Septuagint for the most part. It says, ho, ho, flee from the land of the north, saith Yahuwah. For I will gather you from the four winds of heaven, saith Yahuwah, even to Zion. Deliver yourselves, ye that dwell with the daughter of Babylon. Thus saith Yahuwah Almighty, after the glory has he sent me to the nations that spoil you. For he that touches you is as one that touches the apple of his eye. For behold, I will bring my hand upon them, and they shall be a spoil to them that serve them. And ye shall know that Yahuwah Almighty has sent me. Rejoice and be glad, O daughter of Zion. For behold, I come, and I will dwell in the midst of thee, saith Yahuwah. So you can say this is another double entendre inside of scripture. Flee from the land of the north, okay? Now we know that the empire that comes against Babylon inside of the Old Testament that succeeds Babylon, it is the Medes and the Persians. Technically, you can say that they are north of Babylon, although also they're east of Babylon, but they encompass Babylon. But are they the land of the north, right? Something that's interesting that you should consider is that obviously the land of the north has a lot of connotations with Europe. We also know that America is North America. Is that inconsequential? I don't know. Now think about the north inside of today's terms, the global north. Who is the global north? The global north is the European nations. The global north is the United States. Who's the global south? It's the countries that are being ravaged by the north. So when it says flee from the land of the north, I don't believe that these are coincidences. I also don't believe it's a coincidence. Let's say you are in the United States. I don't think it's a coincidence that when we talk about the north, we tend to be talking about industrialized places. We tend to be talking about the cities inside of the north. Whereas most people who are able to actually live off the land, many of those people end up going to the south. So when it says flee from the land of the north, here's something else I want you to consider. It doesn't say, I will come get you from the land of north in this instance. Now, I know what you're thinking. The scripture talks inside of the same scripture about him gathering us from the four corners. But that gives us a timeline, because that tells us that before he gathers us from the four corners, that Babylon will be judged if you're looking at this in sequence. So let's go through the scripture again slowly. So it says, ho, ho, flee from the land of the north. Okay, again, think about the global north. Saith Yahuwah, I will gather you from the four winds of heaven, saith Yahuwah, even Sion. Deliver yourselves. Deliver yourself. This is an action word. This is telling you to do something. Ye that dwell with the daughter of Babylon, for thus saith Yahuwah, after the glory has he sent me to the nations that spoil you, for he that touches you is as one that touches the apple of his eyes. Behold, I will bring my hand upon them, and they shall be spoiled to them that serve them, and ye shall know that Yahuwah Almighty has sent me. Meaning, there has to be a sequence of events. The fact that we're being told at one moment, deliver yourself, means that Yah will judge them, and the judgment will be before the regathering of Yasharal. The downfall of America will be in this sequence before the regathering of Yasharal. So meaning, if you are thinking that I'm going to sit here and wait until the regathering, okay, be aware of the reality that the system's going to collapse first. The system is going to be destroyed first. It's going to be pillaged first. But Yahushua will obviously regather us. That doesn't mean that Yah is going to withhold his judgment from the nation because we are there, which is what I take away from the scripture. The fact that it says, like I said, some translations will say, get up now, go. This translation, ho, ho, flee. That tells me that Yahuwah does not want us inculcated in the system when this judgment falls on the system. Meaning, this is something that he has personally against this land. He has personally against these people who have ravaged the earth. He has a personal issue, a qualm to deal with. And does he want his people in the midst of this whenever he's dealing with them? No, he does not. He wants us to be out of the way. He tells us to get out of the word, ye that dwell with the daughter of Babylon, you who live with the daughter of Babylon. He does not want you in the way because the judgment's going to happen one way or the other. Think very similar to Egypt, ancient Egypt, right? We know that there was Goshen. That was the place where the children of Yasharel were to be. If some of the children of Yasharel, and we could say conceivably, it could have been the case, right? Were actually not in Goshen, but were actually in Egypt, right? They were living amongst, right? I'm sure maybe that was the case. You can only speculate. But let's say, for argument's sake, a few of them might have been like working in the Egyptians' houses or just scattered a little bit inside of the nation, right? Again, complete hypothetical. But would Yah have withhold the plagues that he had coming down in Egypt because they were there? No, he wouldn't. Would he necessarily be covering them so that they would not be affected? No, you're affected if you depend on the system. The system of Egypt literally collapsed during this time. But as for the people of Goshen, people who were there, those were people who were able to be separate from him. Because when the water of Egypt became poisoned, when the water of Egypt turned into blood, they had their own water that they were able to drink. Whenever the plague goes out against the cattle, they had their own cattle, meaning if the people of Goshen were just dependent on the Egyptians for cattle, they would also have gone down with this plague. So let's understand, Goshen is real. Whenever people separate themselves, whenever people are set apart under the direction of Yahushua, under the direction of the Ruach HaKodesh, those people will have the hand of Yahuwah on them. But at the same time, is it promised that those who are living in the midst of the judgment that's being waged against the system are going to be preserved? Prayerfully, yes, but I don't know. We don't know. We know he doesn't want us there because he told them, flee. So I want to go through some more scriptures. We're going to go through Jeremiah. So if you have a Masoretic text, and if you don't know the difference, Masoretic text, Septuagint, I have a video breaking this down. I think it's pretty important, so I'll plug it here. I have a few videos, basically. If you have a Masoretic text Bible, that's pretty much almost every Bible that you will find. The chapters that I'm going to read from will be Jeremiah 50 and 51. I'm going to be reading from the Septuagint Bible. And in fact, I'm not even going to read from the Britain Septuagint on this, the Lexham English Septuagint. I recommend, if you're going to get a Septuagint, this is a really, really good version. Why is it really good? Any Bible that tries to stick to the actual text instead of try to interpret what they think the person meant, I recommend that. Because frankly, no one knows the culture of the true people of Yasharel. All of the people who would know it were completely dispersed, destroyed, and there's no one to tell, right? People who make those guesses, oh, this must have been talking about this type of tradition that comes from Judaism. Well, one, we know that those people are not the authority in scripture. And number two, we know that the true people who could have given that insight, their culture was wiped out. They are now living amongst the African diaspora, unable to read Hebrew, true Hebrew. So I would absolutely recommend you stick to literal versions, even if you also have a sacred name scripture. I understand the need of that. But as far as understanding prophecy and the history of things, this one is the one that I would recommend. It's on Amazon. By all means, you can check it out. So I'm going to read from this one. So if you're reading from the Septuagint, it's going to be Jeremiah 27 and 28. If you're reading from a Masoretic text, that's KJV, NASB, ESV, pretty much any Bible, it's going to be Jeremiah 50 and 51. Jeremiah 27, verse 1 through 9. We're going to start with verse 1. The word of Yahuwah that he spoke against Babylon. Declare among the nations and make it heard and do not hide. Say, Babylon has been taken. Bel, the undotted image, has been disgraced. Merodach, the delicate image, was handed over, because a nation from the north has gone up against her. This nation will make her land a ruin, and there will be no one who dwells in her, from humankind even to cattle. In those days and at that time, the sons of Yashar will come, they and the sons of Yahudah upon it. They will go walking and weeping, seeking Yahuwah their Elohim. They will ask the way to Zion, for here they will put their face, and they will come and flee for refuge to Yahuwah Elohim, for the eternal covenant will not be forgotten. Okay, so I want to pause here. You might read this and think, oh, this is talking about ancient Babylon, the Neo-Babylonian Empire. I'm going to argue, no, this is actually talking about the present Babylon. How do we know it's talking about the present Babylon? Because whenever you go to a land from the north has gone up against her, a land from the north has gone up against her, this nation will make her land a ruin, and there will be no one who dwells in her, from humankind even to cattle. Now, when the Medes and Persians do come up against Babylon, they don't make the place desolate. They essentially, it's a transfer of power. They take over. Now their empire is the one dominating. Okay. Also important to emphasize this. Again, it's talking about a country from the land of the north. Now, can we make some educated guesses? Because I don't want to act like what I say is authority until it's fulfilled according to Yahuwah's words. But if we were to make an educated guess about what possible country could make modern Babylon desolate, right? The United States. Well, we know just from watching, if you watch news, if you pay attention to what's going on, you know that Russia and China right now, that it's getting hot right there, right? Those are both countries in the north. So when it says that a nation from the north has gone up against her, the nation will make her land a ruin, and there will be no one who dwells in her, from humankind even to cattle. The later part, pay close attention. In those days, and at that time, the sons of Yashar will come, they and the sons of Yahudah upon it. Did that happen whenever the Medes and the Persians took over the empire of Babylon? Did the sons of Yahudah and Yasharel come together weeping and mourning? No, that didn't happen at that time, right? Because we know that the children of Yasharel mostly remained scattered. In fact, Yehuda didn't even fully come weeping and mourning. So this was completely not fulfilled in the previous Babylon. Although there was a similar situation, not the full fulfillment was accomplished. Let's go into verse 6. My people have become lost sheep. Their shepherds have thrust them out. They have led them astray upon the mountains. They have gone from mountain to hill. They have forgotten their bed. All those who find them will consume them. Their enemies said, let us not abandon them, because they have sinned against Yahuwah. There is a pasture of righteousness for the one who gathered their fathers. Be alienated. Pay attention here. Be alienated from the middle of Babylon and from the land of the Chaldeans, and go out and become like dragons according to the face of sheep. For look, I'm awakening gathering nations from the land of the north against Babylon, and they will array themselves against her. From thence she will be taken like an arrow of a skilled warrior, will not return in vain. So when the scripture says be alienated from the middle of Babylon, what does that mean to be alienated? Doesn't necessarily mean that you are not there at all, but it does mean that you are not engaged in the culture. You're not engaged in the system. You're not engaged in the religious practices. You're not engaged in the government. You are alienated from this system. We're hopping around, but by the way, definitely I recommend you read the entire chapter of Jeremiah 27-28 in depth in prayer to Yahuwah. And it would be 50 and 51 if you have a Masoretic text. But I'm going to jump over to this part right here. Flee from the middle of Babylon. So this is a repeat. And each of you rescue his life, and do not be cast away in her injustice, because the time of her vengeance is from Yahuwah. He is repaying her repayment to her. So again, this is very important to understand. Yahuwah, absolutely, he loves us, right? Absolutely, he will, if you're in his will, he will direct you, he will lead you. But does Yahuwah want us connected to this Babylon system when it's judged and when it goes down? No, repeat after repeat. We get this very vivid picture. He's saying, okay, I love you, you're my people. I'm going to have to deal with her. So flee, get out of the middle of her. Alienate yourself from her. This is a warning, a prophetic warning to us. And if not for the time that we were in, many of us would not have grasped the realness of this. The times that we're in, it seems urgent that we make affirmative steps to separate ourselves, alienate ourselves from the system, the wicked system, whether that be Yah calling, as he has many people out of her physically, by airplane, by car, whether that means him saying, get out of these cities that are a metropolis of Babylonian culture and system and economy, whatever it is, you have to sink the Ruach, but know what he's saying. He does not want us to be a casualty of the system. This is why he put this warning inside of the scriptures. Us being there, is it going to stop the judgment of Babylon? No. Whenever you read in scripture about this country being judged, and this economic system collapsing, and you read about the merchants of the earth who were weeping because this country was destroyed. Does this affect people who are inculcated in the system? Absolutely. If you can't get your groceries anymore, does that affect you? Yes. But this is prophecy and it has to happen. So we have to contend with that. Okay, this last part, I think it's very important to read. We're going to go from Jeremiah 28:25-33. Look, I am against you, O corrupted mountain that corrupts the whole earth. Again, who corrupts the whole earth? And I will stretch out my hand against you, and I will roll you down upon the rocks, and I will give you up like a burned mountain. And they shall not take a stone from you for a corner and a stone for a foundation, because you will become a ruin for eternity, says Yahuwah. Lift up a signal against the land, sound trumpet against the nations with a trumpet. Sanctify the nations against her, summon against her. Okay, listen here. Raise up kings from me, even for the Ashkenazis. Set up batteries of war against her. Mount up against her cavalry like a multitude of locusts. Okay, I'm going to pause right here. There's a big reason that I recommend getting a Septuagint, particularly this translation is, I think, really, really good. And also having Masoretic text, and also having an interlinear Bible, and having these multiple translations. One reason I recommend it is because you get to see things that were changed. And when you see something that's changed in one version, it has to get you to question, why was it changed? Why would this be one way in this version and this way in another version? This exact scripture is completely different. It reads completely different in the Masoretic text. So I'm going to read it to you in the Masoretic text, and then I'm going to read it back to you inside of the Septuagint. So again, we are in the Masoretic text. This is Jeremiah 51:27, because as I said, the numbers are completely different. It says, lift up a signal, flag in the land, blow a trumpet among the nations. so consecrate the nations against her. Summon against her the kingdoms of Ararat, of Mini, and Ashkenaz. So do you see how that much different that reads? Summon against her, summon against Babylon, the kingdoms of Ararat, Mini, and Ashkenaz. Appoint an officer against her, bring up the houses like bristly locusts. So in this version, you would think what the prophecy is saying is that Yahuwah is going to bring the kingdoms of Ararat, Mini, and Ashkenaz against Babylon. But if you read the version that I was reading, the Septuagint, which we know is the earliest translation of these scriptures for the most part that exists today, if you don't count the Dead Sea Scrolls. Listen again to how different it reads. So jumping to verse 27, it says, lift up a sign against the land, sound the trumpet among the nations with a trumpet. Sanctify the nations against her, against Babylon. Summon against her, raise up kings from me, even for the Ashkenazis. Set up batteries of war against her. So when it's saying raise up kings for me against the Ashkenazis, but in the Masoretic text, it's saying the kings of Ashkenaz and the kings of Mini and the king of, I don't remember the third one, Ararat, they're going to go against her. Completely different meaning. But that would let us know that whoever these people are, I don't know, right? But whoever these people are is talking about, that they're going to be inculcated in Babylon. And if you don't know, I definitely recommend you watch the teaching that I did on the Zionist world order. I'm going to plug it here because that is the final world system. The final nail of the beast is the Zionist world order that's coming very soon. Okay, so it gets even more specific, though. It says, set up batteries at war against her, mount up against her cavalry like a multitude of locusts. Bring nations up against her. The king of the Medes and of all the earth, the reckoning of Yahuwah stood against Babylon to establish the land of Babylon as a ruin, for it is to be uninhabited. Okay, I'm going to pause again. So it's telling you that he's bringing the king of the Medes and of all the earth and his leaders and all of his commanders, okay? Who are the Medes and the Persians today? That is the country of Iran. So we see what's happening right now. We see what's happening with these countries from the land of the north, China and Russia. We see what's happening right now with Iran and Israel. We see what's happening right now with this place called Ashkenaz, or these Ashkenazis is spoken about inside of Jeremiah 28. So we see what's happening, and all of these players are in existence right now. So let's go on. It says, the power has been shattered. They have become like women. Her tents were fine on fire. Her bars were crushed. A pursuer will pursue to a meeting of pursuers, and a reporter to a meeting of reporters, in order to report to the king of Babylon, because the city has been conquered. They were taken at the end of its passages, and their communities were burned with fire, and its men, the warriors, keep coming out. For thus saith Yahuwah, the house of the king of Babylon will be will be threshed like a threshing floor in season. A little longer, and her harvest will come. So a vivid picture prophetically is being painted, and it's one that might be difficult for many of us to come to the realization of, but all things are pointing to, again, reading the text, reading what's happening right now, that there's going to be a very swift demise coming upon the United States. It's not to scare anyone. It's not to scare anyone. It's to encourage all of us to be locked in step with the Most High and understand what time it is and understand what he's doing, okay? I also want to emphasize that you need to figure out your own situation as far as what it means by coming out of her. What do I mean by that? Coming out of her means that when that system goes down, number one, we won't be going down with it, okay? If the food system goes down, we're not going down with it. If the economy goes down, we're not going down with it. If the military goes down, we're not going down with it. That's what coming out of her does mean. It also means that we are not participating in any way in her sins. In fact, let's go to that scripture in Revelation 18. Come out of her, my people, so that you will not participate in her sins and receive her plagues. So there is something very specific in here. It doesn't matter if you are one of his people. It doesn't matter if you keep the Shabbats. If you are a part of the sin, you might say, I'm not a part of the sin. Well, let's talk about that in a moment. But if you're part of the sin that comes from her, okay, you could receive the plagues that come with her. Now, you might say, I'm not a part of the sin. I think most people are not aware of just how foul the United States is. I'm just being real. I think most people are not aware of just how horrible things are in the world outside of their country. I don't think people understand, okay? We're talking right now on a cell phone device, right? Or we're talking on a camera, or we're talking on a computer. I don't think people understand what has happened to people just to be able to do that. I don't think people understand the cobalt that is mined inside of the Congo, where you have children who are dying in dirt trying to get just a little bit of cobalt so that they can sell it so that you can get an iPhone. I don't think we understand the amount of wreckage that has been done inside of these civil wars, whether it was the Congo War and the Rwanda War. If you really look into how many people died because of this war that was 100% orchestrated and organized by the United States government, I don't think you understand the world that you live in, the grocery stores, the bananas that you have inside of your grocery store, the imports that you have so easily. You don't have to go look for avocado, even though avocado is not in season. How come that's the case? Because you're living in an economic system where literally the entire world has been reorganized to cater to you. The entire world has been reorganized to make sure that you always have things on stock inside of your stores. The entire world has been reorganized to make sure that you can get a Tesla. Everything has been organized for that exact purpose. So when it says not participate in her sins, we are all participating in the sins. Now, are we going to be affected by the plagues that accompany the sin? This is not saying you are the person who's guilty of the sin. Let's understand that. What it's saying is that these things that this country has done, these horrible offenses, the mass deaths, the horrible coups, the civil wars, the plagues, all the things that this country, the diseases, all the things this country has unleashed on the world, they have consequences, okay? There's consequences for that grocery store that is always nice and well stocked. There's consequences for the land that we live on that is nicely organized and nicely done. There's consequences that come along with that, okay? When the consequences come, are you going to have to deal with the consequences? When the consequences are meaning there's no food in stock, is that going to affect you? You might say, I didn't have anything to do with that. Yes, you had nothing to do with that as far as your own salvation. That has nothing to do with you. That was someone else. But as far as the judgment that the system still has to face, that's still happening regardless of whether or not it's you particularly who did it or not. So let's understand come out of her to mean that all of these sins that America has committed, they have plagues that accompany them. And if we do not want those plagues to come on us, we have to take inventory of our own lives and see whether or not we are dependent on that system. So this is a message that might be harsh, but it's one that is for this time. And it's one that I pray we all just take with prayer. This is not an alarmist view. I don't have the answer for you or your family because the only one with the answer is the Ruach HaKodesh. Everything is not going to work the same for one person. Not everyone can go to the Bahamas. Not everyone can go to Ghana. Not everyone can go to Kenya. Not everyone can go down south. Not everyone can do all those things. Not everyone can leave the city. But there's something that Yah has for all of us. And so we don't get that from YouTube. We get that from seeking him in our secret place, in the quiet place, in our prayer closet, wherever it is. That's how we get the answer that how he wants to move and navigate us. So that is all I have for this video. Pray that this was helpful to you all. And y'all willing, I'll see you all in the next video.
Prior to Abraham Lincoln, the government in this country said it was legal to hold Africans in slavery in perpetuity. Perpetuity is one of the University of Chicago words. That means forever. From now on, when Lincoln got in office, the government changed. Prior to the passing of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution, the government defined Africans as slaves, as property, people with no rights, to be respected by any whites anywhere. The Supreme Court of the government, same court, granddaddy court of the one that stole the 2000 election, Supreme Court said in its Dred Scott decision in the 1850s, no African anywhere in this country has any rights that any white person has to respect at any place, anytime. That was the government's official position, backed up by the Supreme Court, that's the judiciary, backed up by the executive branch, that's the president, backed up by the legislative branch, and enforced by the military of the government. But I stopped by to tell you tonight that governments changed. Prior to Harry Truman's government, the military in this country was segregated, but governments changed prior to the civil rights and equal accommodations laws of the government in this country. There was back segregation by the country, legal discrimination by the government, prohibited blacks from voting by the government. You had to eat in separate places by the government. You had to sit in different places from white folk because the government said so, and you had to be buried in a separate cemetery. It was apartheid American style from the cradle to the grave, all because the government backed it up. But guess what? Governments change. Where governments lie, God does not lie. Where governments change, God does not change. And I'm through now. But let me leave you with one more thing. Governments fail. The government in this text comprised of Caesar, Quirinius, Pontius Pilate, Pontius Pilate. The Roman government failed. The British government used to rule from east to west. The British government had a Union Jack. She colonized Kenya, Ghana, Nigeria, Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad, and Hong Kong. Her navies ruled the 7 seas all the way down to the tip of Argentina in the Falklands. But the British government failed. The Russian government failed. The Japanese government failed. The German government failed. And the United States of America government, when it came to treating her citizens of Indian descent fairly, she failed. She put them on reservations. When it came to treating her citizens of Japanese descent fairly, she failed. She put them in internment prison camps. When it came to treating the citizens of African descent fairly, America failed. She put them in chains. The government put them on slave quarters, put them on auction blocks, put them in cotton fields, put them in inferior schools, put them in substandard housing, put them in scientific experiments, put them in the lowest paying jobs, put them outside the equal protection of the law, kept them out of their racist bastions of higher education, and locked them into positions of hopelessness and helplessness. The government gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America? No, no, no. Not God Bless America. God damn America, that's in the Bible, for killing innocent people. God damn America, for treating her citizens as less than human. God damn America, as long as she tries to act like she is God and she is supreme. The United States government has failed the vast majority of her citizens of African descent.